which quarterback will start going forward? In your mind, is it clear who the 49ers front office and their coaching staff feel gives them the best chance to win going forward? Because clearly they are still in win now mode.
Yeah, I think it's always been Garoppolo. And that's what they've said from day one. I know we didn't look at it that way, and everybody, really, most of us were thinking that there was some kind of a competition that Lance had an opportunity to beat him out. But I think they were really always kind of focusing on Garoppolo, and it was going to have to take something big from Lance to beat him out. So, I expect that it's going to be Garoppolo this week against Indianapolis. And we'll see how long he can play. It just depends on whether or not they're winning games. I think if they get back to where they're losing, and like you said, they fall out of the playoff race, which could happen probably within the next 6 weeks, then I think you adjust and change gears and start focusing for next year.
Yeah, agreed. Mathematically, unfortunately, it will take a long time before the 49ers are mathematically eliminated from this year's playoffs with the new format. But I think we will know sooner rather than later whether this team is for real and has any chance at making the playoffs there. For me, I certainly look at this and wonder if we need to be in a situation where you're continuing to get the reps for Trey, even though you've gone back to Jimmy. Because it feels, and the 49ers have acknowledged this in how many attempts they've made to address the quarterback room, it feels inevitable that we would have gotten to a point where Jimmy would be injured and we would need to go to our second quarterback. Sure enough, that's the reality of what happened. And it felt as if the 49ers, in their preparations for trying to give Jimmy all of the first team reps, or at least a vast majority of them, failed in preparing Trey to be that adequate backup quarterback, as he was not able to come in and win a game. And maybe I'm being a bit too critical since it was the Arizona Cardinals he had to play against. But do you see the 49ers as having failed a bit in properly preparing Trey for that inevitable situation where he would need to fill in for an injured Jimmy?
Yeah, this is something that I keep hearing, and I'm struggling with it. And the reason I say I struggle with it is because during training camp, they split reps evenly. It was 3 reps for Garoppolo, 3 reps for Lance, 1 or 2 reps for the third guy, 3 reps, and it was the same. It was that way all the way through. The only time that changed in practice is when they went to situational periods where it was like a move the ball period, and then it depended on if the quarterback got the job done. If the quarterback did his job, they'd move the ball, they'd continue to keep running plays, and then that, and so on and so forth.
Interesting.
And that's where the amount of snaps split up. And a part of the problem with Lance was that he wasn't doing very well in those periods, particularly when they put the ball on, say, like the 30 or 40 and have to go down the field. If it was in the red zone, that was different because you're already close there. But in those periods where they're trying to move the ball, not just working on, say, second down plays or first down plays where the ball doesn't move at all,
Right.
where it's pretty much just within that, to get a first down area, that's when they were usually splitting reps evenly. When it started becoming to move the ball, that's where you saw the two separate. And there were times when, Garoppolo would just take more plays to get down the field to score, but he'd do it because that's the way that Garoppolo runs the offense.
That makes more sense. A bit more plotting of an offense with the short passes.
Right. And whereas with Lance, they might score as well, but it was, incompletion, 1 yard gain, 12-yard completion, incompletion, 13-yard completion, those kind of things. It was much more of a stop and start, just like we saw on Sunday, quite frankly, last Sunday. It was that kind of an offense during training camp as well. So that's the only reason. And then when you get to the preseason games, Lance got much more reps in the games than Garoppolo did.
That's
Garoppolo
true. More snaps.
Garoppolo only played a little bit, and then in every game, they gave Lance an opportunity to come in and play with the starters. So against Kansas City, it was 1 series for Garoppolo, 1 series, 2 series for Lance, because the first series was a 3 and out. The next series was a touchdown throw, right? And then against same thing against Los Angeles, the Chargers, it was a series for Garoppolo, and then Lance came in, and then Lance played the rest of the game. And he struggled early on again with the starters and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of, I think if you add up all of their preseason reps along with their, you kind of really look at it, I think they gave them as many opportunities as they could without saying, making him the starter, really.
Right.
Because you've got to get if you're not planning on him being the starter, you need to get your starter ready for the season. And I felt like I'd never been there before, so I don't know what it was like in previous years when
Sure.
it was Mullins as the second teamer, but it just seems like it was pretty evenly spread out to me, and it was more of the quarterbacks taking advantage of the opportunities.
So the
Deal.
opportunity was there, and it played out basically the way that it should based on the results that each player was able to get.
Yeah.
Well, that certainly puts it in a different light. I mean, there is a lot of blame to go around, certainly anytime there are losses. But if you look at it in that light, it's not quite as fair to criticize the 49ers for not getting those additional reps to Trey, unless you were asking them to forego this season and focus only on the development of Trey Lance. And that's clearly not an acceptable course of action for a team as talented as the 49ers. Do you find it to be, not to sidetrack us here, but do you find it to be a flawed course of action, the way in which the 49ers attempted to do two things this year? Was it fundamentally flawed from the outset?
Yeah, because there's only so much time that you have with your players, and if you're installing things that only one person is going to run, that means that you're spending who knows how much of that time is. Let's say you've got an hour, and it's going to take you 10 minutes to work on this one play. That means that you're taking up a sixth of your time on something that only one person's going to run, where everybody else is just kind of sitting in the room. And I understand the offensive line is going to have to do it and so on and so forth, but you're spending a lot of time on something that's going to be only used a couple of times, and it doesn't really make sense. And based off of what we saw of the 49ers offense, in Arizona, if that's the expectation for this team moving forward when Trey Lance becomes your starter, yeah, because that's not the 49er offense. It's everything. It's everything that you really don't want to see. Really,
No.
That was a bad plan. I don't understand that plan at all. What their thinking was going into it, other than Shanahan, he has his new toy and he's got this 11-man football mentality, and it's going to open up all these options for us, and we're going to be able to run through them because now we've got an extra blocker and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And meanwhile, you've got a quarterback running the ball who doesn't run the ball like a running back. Even though he had some nice runs in college, it's not the same in the NFL.
It most definitely is not. And we saw that play out on the field. It certainly looked to be a questionable game plan, and it left me wondering whether it was just a poor decision on Shanahan's part to attack the Cardinals in that fashion, or whether he really was limited by the percentage of the playbook he felt comfortable running with Trey Lance. And I suppose without really getting into Shanahan's head, we can't know the answer to that. But
what's real quick to interrupt you, the funny thing about that though is when you look at that game, there's not a whole lot that they did that's different than what they would do from a passing game standpoint. I mean, there's not a whole lot that they called that you wouldn't expect to see with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, for example, the interception, that's a Jimmy Garoppolo play. Turn your back, you've got the curl, you've got the wheel, you hit, he's going to hit the curl most likely because he doesn't usually throw down the sidelines unless it's, so that's a Jimmy Garoppolo play. There were other routes throughout the game where there were very similar, like Jimmy Garoppolo things. And I'm talking about those checkdowns where you've got a hold on one of them and a sack on the other. Those are Jimmy Garoppolo gimmies that we call Jimmy gimmies, where it's just a quick, easy throw to Kyle Juszczyk running an in route with everybody blocking down the field. You get the ball to Juszczyk, you let him gain 5 yards for you. And then
Right.
they tried to do it from the other side with Deebo Samuel. And one time it's a sack and the other time it's a hold because he doesn't throw the ball.
The holding penalties were so painful to watch. All right, so do you think, I mean, it seems that Kyle Shanahan agrees with you, Jack, that Jimmy gives us the best chance going forward. He's been very ardent about saying that Jimmy is the starter so long as he is healthy. Do you see, very quickly, anything that can happen in the next two games before the trade deadline that changes that to where the 49ers attempt to move on from Garoppolo and trade him before the deadline?
Yeah, if a team's going to give him overpay for him, I think they might look into that. The hard part is that Garoppolo contract is so big that I don't know if there's a team out there, like say, for example, Cleveland, who has some issues with Baker Mayfield. I don't know if do they have $24 million to almost $25 million under the cap that they can make that trade and bring Garoppolo in to replace him, or would Garoppolo be willing to, take more money to knock down his cap number and push money out and all that kind of stuff? Would Cleveland want to do that? Probably not, considering they have Baker Mayfield and he's the guy that they expect to be the future of their franchise.
Right. I have to admit, as soon as Baker went down and it looked pretty brutal on that injury, I began formulating a tweet about will Cleveland be willing to pay for Jimmy Garoppolo? And by the time I finished wording the tweet exactly how I wanted it, Baker was walking out of the blue tent, and it appeared that it wasn't quite as serious as it initially had seemed. And who knows, he may not miss a heck of a lot of time with that dislocated shoulder. But that felt like an ideal scenario where you have a team that has legitimate playoffs / Super Bowl aspirations this year and then is derailed by an injury to their quarterback. That does seem like an ideal situation. I would agree that the only likely scenario is where the 49ers do feel they're being overpaid for Jimmy's services and are able to then get some compensation back in the form of draft picks.